Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Readybuild Master Series. I'm Jeremy Newlick with Boldr Futures. With me today is Joel Post, president of Readybuild,
Hello, hello.
and our special guest, Brian Gottlieb.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you.
So, for those of you who are joining for the first time, this Master Series exists for one reason, and it's to bring you the insights of people who've already solved a lot of the problems that you're facing right now. And in our conversations with CEOs, we format this series to go right at those challenges. And for some housekeeping, we'll have a section of Q&A. So please do hit us up with your questions as you're listening to this journey that Brian's going to outline for us today. Joel, as always, it's great to hang with you for these. Give the newbies on this call a heads up on what's in store.
Absolutely. So the Master Series is not business theory. We're here to have real conversations with leaders who built, scaled, and often, many cases, exited remodeling and construction businesses. People who knew what it actually takes to break through that ceiling that most companies stop at between that 5 and 20 million range. Each session is designed around a single question that matters to you right now. Today's question is this: how do you build a business that runs without you? Because here's the truth: if you can't take a week off without everything grinding to a halt, you don't have a business. You have what our guest today calls a high-paying job. So today we're going to unpack what it actually takes to build systems and leadership that scale without you being in the middle of everything. Honestly, that's why I started Readybuild. We wanted to develop a platform, a central nervous system for our customers, so they could shift from firefighting every day to start thinking about future-oriented decisions and get themselves out of the day-to-day grind. So, Jeremy, maybe you can start with why that's important.
Sure. And that's where we have a lot of common purpose and why we folded this Mastery Series concept together. Because at Boldr Futures, we work with owners on developing and enhancing valuation of this thing that they've spent decades trying to build. And one of the common things that we run into there is that the companies that command the highest enterprise value are the ones that run independent of their founder. And that doesn't happen by accident, as we'll discover today. It happens through intentional systems, leadership development, a culture that can surround that entrepreneur. And we're fortunate to be joined by somebody who's built that structure at scale. And so our guest today, Brian Gottlieb, I wanted to get you introduced, but before I do, and before I even give you the floor and a chance to talk, I wanted to share something that stuck out to me. Honestly, I'm going to be reading this because I'm pulling from a script of a previous interview you gave, Brian.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I can have the court reporter read back to you. You had said in a previous podcast, in the early days of starting a business, the entrepreneur is the only person working in the business. The performance of the business, the goal of the business is just survival. It's just, how do I stay in business for another day? And over time, maybe you move from survival mode to maybe you have a job and it's a job from hell. Nobody wants that job because you're working a million hours and your phone doesn't stop ringing. But to really build a business now, you have to start hiring people. You have to have a team. And performance of the organization is no longer based on how well you as the entrepreneur performs. It's how well the teams perform. Joel, why don't you take it from there?
Yeah, that's the shift we're going to talk about today, from
Yeah.
entrepreneur performance to team performance, from survival to system, and then from job to business. So Brian knows this territory well. He started his first company back in 2009 in the back of a friend's warehouse on a plastic folding table with $3,000 in his pocket. And his only goal was to stop traveling and to be able to spend more time with his family, make it home for dinner on time. So over 15 years, he built 3 separate companies: a jacuzzi bath remodel, Tundraland Home Improvements, and multiple Renewal by Andersen franchises. So combined, he had over 600 employees and $150 million in annual revenue. And he successfully exited each one. But here's what makes today's conversation valuable. Brian didn't just build big companies, he built companies that could run without him. After he exited, he wrote a book called Beyond the Hammer, which has become one of the most widely read leadership books in our industry. In it, he breaks down the 5 foundational principles that took him from that plastic folding table to running organizations at scale. But we're not here to talk about the book today. We're here to talk about the barriers, and the real barriers that stop remodeling companies from scaling. The ones that don't get solved by working harder or hiring another project manager or running another sale. Brian, welcome to the Master Series.
Thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it. And by the way, it's interesting because I've done a lot of podcasts, and thank you for quoting me. I didn't know what you were going to say, but I thought this is like a year after my book came out. I'm like, why don't I wear a t-shirt with my book name on it. So I need to promote. Now I just need to get one that flashes and maybe changes colors. Anyway, it's all good. Yeah, thanks for having me. We're gonna get into it, but I'm also gonna apologize in advance because I might give some opinions that are not the norm, but I also think they're the truth. Okay.
I think we're eager to hear those because we want to hear your real unvarnished thoughts for sure. And certainly things that are not just the orthodox of what you hear every time somebody says, what does it take to build a business? And so before we even get into the specifics, it's from a big picture perspective. You've had some distance now, even from the book and also from your exit. So when you look back at what it took from $3,000 folding table to 150 million in revenue, that couldn't have been a straight line. And at least that's what I'm perceiving from the way you wrote your book. What were some of the ceilings that you ran into as you were developing?
Look, and I think that's the thing. I think people can go on social media and they can see all kinds of content about you got to work on your business and not in your business. And the truth is, it's not a choice of either or. The truth is it's both and. Look, business owners, when you start a business, when I started my business with $3,000, I'm all in on my business. Many people are all in on their business. If their business doesn't make it, they don't make it in life. And it affects their home. It affects, you're all in on it. And to release control when you're all in on your business is very difficult. And by the way, might not even be the right thing to do. In the early days of business, you really have to focus on every little detail of the business. When I sold my group of companies, if I were to add up our marketing budget of all of the different businesses combined, even though they sold at different points, it was probably north of $20 million a year that was being spent on marketing. When I exited the business, I wasn't making all those marketing decisions. But in the early days, when the marketing budget was $2 and $3 and $4 million, that's a lot of money, or even $500,000 a year in the early stages of business. I couldn't afford to let somebody else spend that the wrong way. It just isn't realistic. So when we talk about working on or in our business, I would like to reframe it and say we have to work with our business. Sometimes we have to be in the business, and sometimes we have to be on the business, direction, the future, all those sorts of things. But I would say don't beat yourself up and use that as the only litmus test on whether or not you're successful.
Oh, that's great.
That's an important point.
At what points did you get to some of those? What were some of the key inflection points? If you look back at that timeline, the first time you were like, I have to find a way to work on this, or at 2 years, you'd write preposition with this.
Yeah, it was inches towards that destination of full empowerment. But one of the challenges, and look, I don't think any of us intentionally want to be a leader that micromanages our team. I don't think anybody aspires to be a micromanager. I want to micromanage my team. That's how I'm going to build a big business. But without systems and processes and disciplines, it's very difficult for those people to make good decisions inside of the organization if they don't understand what the future is or expectations on the customer journey. The business owner does become a bottleneck and does have to micromanage unintentionally. So look, for me, there were several inflection points, but the one that stands out to me the most was, I remember I was in my office and we were probably this was in the Tundraland building, and we were probably, I don't know what kind of revenue we were doing. Maybe we were doing combined $30 million a year in revenue. And somebody was talking to me in my office, and then there were two people in the hallway waiting for me to talk. They were online. They were online in my office waiting to talk to me. And I'm like, this is insane. How about that? These people can't do their job because they have to talk to me. That's a lack of empowerment. And it was in that moment when I realized the first thing I need to do is remodel my office. And I took out my standard desk and put in just this flat slab of wood with the idea that if there's a piece of paper in my office, somebody is not empowered to do something.
Oh, interesting.
But also when it comes to how do you empower people, look, I travel the country doing keynotes in our industry all over the place. One question I always ask people is, how many of you need to do a better job documenting your systems and processes? And as sure as I'm sitting right here with you right now, 98% of the hands go up. Okay. And the truth is this, we were terrible at it for a very long time. But what we were good at, and what I think you can do if you're a business owner or a manager, don't obsess on documenting systems and processes. That's the second place to get to. The first thing is understanding what are your business disciplines. Let's start by just deciding what are our business disciplines. And I'll give you an example. Like one of our business disciplines was the lead is sacred. Okay, that's a business discipline. The lead is sacred. Now we can talk all day long that if we believe the lead is sacred, how do we treat a sacred lead? What kinds of systems and processes and scripting and call cadences do we need to treat a lead sacredly? Another discipline was when we're done with the job, we get paid in full 100%. Okay, that's a discipline. Now we can talk about what does our system and process need to be to deliver to that discipline. It's my opinion that every department inside of your business should have at least one discipline, and a discipline is timeless. A system and process might change as time goes on, but the discipline is timeless. If you focus on the discipline and teach the discipline, even if you stink at having a documented system and process, at least people understand, okay, it's a lead, I better treat it sacredly. Or, oh my gosh, I got to do what I can to get paid when I'm done with this job. Or we run a full sales presentation every single time. Core disciplines will get you through and then help when you teach a system and process to make the whole teaching stickier.
That's really compelling. What do you think is commonly what I've heard people say is those are like values or something like this? And can you delineate between what commonly people talk about as company values, between the difference between that and a core business discipline?
Yeah, I think when I think of company values, I think of integrity and having a winning attitude and all those sort of things, and positivity and positive encouragement.
It sounds more like a belief.
Yeah, it is a belief. It's how do we win? How does your organization win? How do you fend off competition? How do you build a winning business? What does winning look like? And what are the things that create a winning business? If I don't have a discipline that the lead is sacred, nobody is going to treat it that way, and the odds are I'm probably not going to win. But if we have that mentality, it changes how we approach a lot of things in the organization. So I think it's very different than what core values are. And I also think, by the way, if you're trying to figure out how to really grow a business, if you're stuck at like $1 or $2 million and you're getting killed with competitors, think about what they really stink at, what your competitors stink at. Make it one of your disciplines. Make the opposite thing one of your business disciplines. Really? By removing that dissatisfaction, you have a great way of growing your business.
You mentioned an interesting phrase, and the lead is sacred. And
correct.
What does sacred mean to you, and how do you distill that to your team members? Because there's always the honest response is that no employee is going to care as much as you do. So how do you instill that caring and drive to treat that lead as sacred and your customers as sacred?
In 560 BC, Sun Tzu wrote a book called The Art of War. And inside of The Art of War, there are a lot of things he wrote about. One of the things he said is that which you leave on the battlefield makes your enemy stronger. That which you leave behind makes your enemy stronger. And it could be on a battlefield. It could be in a camp. It could be an arrow. It could be a piece of food. All the things you leave behind actually make your enemy stronger. I think in business, that which you leave behind from a lead standpoint makes your competitor stronger. Now, this applies to the inquiry that comes in that we don't call quick enough. It applies to working a home show and not talking to somebody that's walking by our booth. That person we didn't talk to might actually talk to our competitor, and they might win their business, and they will now be a stronger competitor. It might be the marketing source we didn't do, with people don't even know we exist. So I think it's something that everybody can understand. So I think part of the disciplines of business is you have to make it that I know how I can affect a piece of that. As every individual understands, okay, if I'm at a home show, it means I don't let people walk by my booth without engaging them. If I'm working in a call center, it means speed to lead really matters. If I'm a salesperson, I have to value and appreciate every customer that I'm with, because as the lead is sacred, the customer is sacred. And even in business leadership, we all want a relational team, right? We want to have great relationships with our customers. We want people treating our customers great. But a lot of times when you get behind closed doors inside of company meetings, you hear conversations around labor cost and material cost and marketing cost and all these transactional things. And occasionally, of course, we're talking about the pissed off customer too, the customer that wants a free house because something went wrong, right? So we're talking about that stuff too. But when are we talking about, if we like relationships and we want relational people, when do we talk about the happy customer? Who brings that story to the table. How many business leaders and managers are so busy running their business that they don't have time to meet with happy customers? And I think these are the opportunities when we think about the lead is sacred and the customer is sacred. I think these are opportunities that spread across most organizations out there.
It's really interesting. So when you created those disciplines,
Yeah.
Are they disciplines that, hey, here's a category, or you were in the sales function at Tundraland, let's say, and you have these disciplines. Were they different than disciplines who are in other, for lack of a better term, department?
100%. 100. So one of the sales disciplines was we run a full sales presentation every single time. That's a discipline. That doesn't apply to marketing or production, but that's important for them. So how do they teach their team how do you get permission to run a full presentation every single time? How does the marketing team have to set up the scenario where you can run a full presentation every single time? If my sales managers, do I care about the sales model? Of course I care about the sales model. Of course I care about the type of people that we're bringing on board. But ultimately, if my sales managers, my sales leaders don't have that philosophy that we have to create a team that runs a full presentation every single time, how are we ever going to have a predictable business? How are we ever going to hit targets with a high level of certainty? How are we ever going to really grow with consistency? How are we ever going to make sure the dollars we spend on marketing are actually going to show up in revenue through sales? So the disciplines are necessary if you want to build a healthy business. If I may, I just want to take that one step further, okay?
Yeah.
When I think about the single most important discipline of business, now you read my book. I don't want to come across, wow, I'm all about the numbers and hard ass and all that. I believe in culture and leadership and building high performance teams, and I really care about people, right? And these disciplines help them get there, because if you really want to build a team, the lid of the business is connected to the lid of the people on the team. The business can't outgrow the people's capabilities, okay? If you want to build your business, you have to build the people, right? They are the lid of your business. When we think about the most important discipline in growing a business, first and foremost is an organization's ability to not just forecast a target, but hit those targets with a high level of certainty, right? Because what happens is, I travel the country. There are so many organizations where people want to hire an office manager, or they want to hire a full-time bookkeeper, or they want to hire whatever role, but they're afraid to take on the overhead. They're afraid to take on the overhead so they don't make that hire. That is a symptom of a bigger problem. The bigger problem is they don't trust their forecasted targets. They don't have a high level of confidence that they're going to have the cash to cover that cost. That is why the single most important discipline is forecasting and hitting targets with a high level of certainty. All the other disciplines that we talk about are underneath that one.
I'm assuming that ties back into your earlier topic of having a winning mentality. How does that play into your hiring process of bringing people into your organization? Is there a prerequisite of the types of individuals that you're looking to bring on, or are you looking for people that are just overall good people, they're coachable, and you can train them to be successful in your organization?
I'm a big fat softy, okay, to be clear. Okay? And I love people. I just want to give everybody a chance. I want to give everybody a chance. Sometimes I hire the person and not for the role, and then figure out where to put them. And that was more common when the business was younger. Let's just hire good people and figure out where they can add value. I've also stubbed my toe in this way too. I remember there were these 3 sales reps that worked for one of my competitors. And at the time, and we were, again, a smaller business, I hired them, okay? Got them from my competitor, and now they work for me. And you know what? While they sold like crazy, it was one of the most disruptive things in my business. They bring their own systems, they bring their own processes, they bring their own ways, and they bring their own culture. And it just didn't work out at all. And what I've learned along the way is that when you do hire in certain roles, okay? Now, to be clear, I don't always hire people without experience. One of the most important hires I ever made was a gentleman named Todd Reese, who was my chief financial officer. I never had a CFO. I didn't realize the value of a CFO. I don't know how to onboard or teach a CFO stuff. But when I brought this guy on board, he essentially changed the future of the business. Okay. But that was bringing somebody on with experience. Today, he's one of the owners of one of the businesses that I sold, and they're really running a successful company. But Look, I would rather bring somebody on board that doesn't necessarily have that experience and teach them and become a training organization like I write about in my book. Because if you can teach and develop others and train others, we're not held hostage by rules that are out in the world. There's going to be a labor shortage next year. I guarantee there will be, by the way. Do we deal with that, or do we figure out how do we get around that?
When you develop these disciplines, where did they live? How are they tangible? How are they communicated? How did they come to life in the organization?
Yeah.
What was that journey like?
Yeah, it was so interesting because if you were in the department, everybody knew it. It was like everybody knew the discipline, but it wasn't like posted on the wall. It was part of the life and the breath of the organization. It was just, when somebody joins the team, they learn it. It was ingrained. It was in the DNA of the business. And that's where I think when we start looking at the difference between systems and processes and disciplines, you could have the greatest encyclopedia of systems and processes. But if people don't understand it or go to it or know how to find it or know how to interpret it or know why it exists or know how to teach it, it doesn't do any good. I think the ultimate, if you have the right disciplines and the right systems and processes, I think you can be a beast of a business.
Sure.
So if you look at one of the first barriers that you talk about is the owner as the bottleneck, were there times where you reached that kind of frustration point with the people that were in your organization and you feel like you had to step back in? Were you able to disconnect and bring them in and then trust them and empower them right away? Or was there a push and pull scenario there?
Yeah, look, again, I believe in giving leaders, teaching leaders that their business is just a business inside of a business, right? That's all it is. It's a business inside of a business. And if I want to teach them to become great business leaders, we have to think about it like they all own hamburger stands, okay? And at the end of the night, they have to count the cash in their hamburger stand so they know if they had a good day. That's called daily reporting. If I'm the owner of a hamburger stand and I count my cash and I wonder if I have more cash in than I thought, why? How did I succeed at that? Or wow, I had less cash than I thought. What did I do wrong in my business? So I think part of releasing control is empowerment. But to empower, we have to teach people what it takes to run a good business inside of the business. They then have to be accountable to what's called closing out their cash register or daily targets. If you think about it, if we have to be great at forecasting and hitting targets with a high level of certainty, those targets might start as a 12-month target that then become a 30-day target that then actually become a daily target for everybody. So everybody has a daily target and everybody has to speak to their daily target on a daily basis. If a business is missing target or a unit inside of the business is missing target for a few days, can I go in and fix it? Perhaps, but I'd be better served if I ask the leader of that department 3 questions. What are the reasons we're missing target? What action steps are you taking towards fixing it? And 3, by what date will we be back on target? Because it teaches people they have to be able to come up with a solution and then put a time and date certain to it. And I also find that silos happen in this organization very easily. Marketing's in a silo, sales is in a silo. And I don't know that they always understand how their targets interact with other targets. So I think it's all part of creating an aligned team. So have I had to step in at times? Sure, I've had to step in at times, but usually, look, when a business is small, when I had 15 employees, okay, I was really good at making decisions. As the business grows and you have more and more people in your organization, you're so far away from the customer, the CEO might not be the best person to make a decision. The decision maybe should rest further down. You're probably doing the business a disservice by trying to make those decisions because you're in an ivory tower and a shepherd should smell like the sheep. And when the business gets that big, you don't necessarily smell like the sheep as much as you used to. So maybe you aren't the best shepherd for that decision.
In addition to the time when you had the line of people waiting outside your office, were there other inflection points as you grew, as you're saying, like you got further and further away from the sheep, that you realized, oh wait, I'm the problem, or I'm maybe not the best suited? Were there specific moments or inflection points that you ran into where they come to mind?
Yeah, first of all, that when we looked at where was resistance and friction in the business, right? Where is friction happening? Somebody can't make a decision. Somebody can't do their job. Somebody can't. And usually it stems from too much complexity. It's very easy to make a business complicated, and it's very hard to keep it simple. But simplicity scales and complexity is the enemy of execution. So look, we've had to make choices on even what products we sold because it was just too much complexity. Now I need unicorns to run, to be managers, and unicorns are really hard to find. The other thing that would happen in the early days, we sold some beautiful projects that we didn't make any money on. Okay, we didn't make any money on, but boy, oh boy, were they beautiful. And I realized that you might have a very chaotic business where it's complicated, everybody's running around, they're working really hard, very chaotic, but you're selling stuff, you can produce revenue. Chaos can produce revenue, but discipline produces profit.
Interesting.
Love that.
And we've talked a bit about this, but zeroing back in on this people issue. And I have heard you talk about in previous podcasts how you had this evolution from we're a construction company, we became a sales organization.
Correct.
That happened to build spaces, and then we became a training organization, to your point. Some of the CEOs we talk to, they struggle with building to that team, to that size. What's the real differentiator that it requires of the leader to make an intentional choice on, I actually want to make an investment in pulling in the best possible people?
Yeah, and I think most companies do some version of training inside of their business. What we have to ask ourselves, is it the most effective way to train? And just because we're doing a training event, it doesn't mean we're a training organization. That's two very different things. Training isn't this thing you do once. It's an ongoing process. And I think part of that is identifying what are the skill sets that we need to develop inside of our organization, and for what reason. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine a couple of days ago, and he asked me the question, aren't you afraid that when you do all this training and developing that you're actually building your next competitor and you're teaching people how to run a business? Because a lot of the people in my organization had P&L responsibility, and I'm an open book when it comes to how we generate leads and all that stuff. But to me, what is the alternative? Do I not develop them? But the truth is, yeah, you might develop somebody, and maybe you are developing your next competitor, but it's still your responsibility, I believe, to be the best opportunity out there. Because if you're not, shame on you. So look, I think when we think about what do we teach, what do we train, and what does ongoing training look like, what is our desired outcome? And I think our desired outcome is, how do we build people that know and understand the business, that can step in as leaders in the organization, really building bench strength. What really pushed us to grow, okay? It was pretty interesting because in the beginning, I pushed the business to grow. In the later years, the people pushed the business to grow.
Wow.
And it didn't really hit me until probably a year after I exited the business, that it was the people that pushed the businesses to grow, because I had bench strength. And if I don't do something with those people, they're probably going to go do something with somebody else. So it forced the business to go faster, which was a very healthy environment.
So for the owners that are drowning sometimes in their day-to-day, it's hard to tell them to teach other people how to swim. So
1,000,000%.
how do you slow down, speed up, and
Okay, I'm going to give you a few steps, a few action plans. Okay, highly actionable. Number one, when you solve a problem in isolation as a business leader, you're robbing somebody else from a training opportunity. That's the first thing, okay? You're robbing somebody of a training opportunity. Number two, today, figure out by department your business disciplines. And then tell it to somebody, okay? Tell it to somebody and have them tell you what that means and how they can apply it to the business today. What are some things they can do to activate around that business discipline? Because while you might not have a system and process in place, you're going to have a more empowered individual, okay? Number three, you have to figure out how can you begin to let go of some control, knowing, and here's your off-ramp. It's okay to be wrong, just don't be wrong for long. So empower somebody and then inspect it. Empower somebody, then inspect it. And just see how they're doing and give them a chance to try to fix things. Or if somebody comes to you with a problem, they say, hey, oh my gosh, I got this problem with Mr. and Mrs. Jones. How should we fix it? What would you do? Ask that question. What would you do? Go ahead and do that. Let them know. Because people also, in all fairness, people further down the org chart are afraid to make the wrong decision. Okay, they're afraid to, so they tend to get petrified and frozen in indecision. And indecision is a horrible customer experience. It's a horrible employee journey. It's just not good for anybody. Look, in a command control environment, if you think about micromanagement, right? If I'm going to have a business where I'm micromanaging everyone, that means that mistakes are going to be punished. If you make a mistake, I'm punishing you. In an empowered environment, it's indecision that you don't want. It's not a mistake, it's indecision. It's okay to be wrong with a mistake, just don't be wrong for long. You really have to stand up against indecision. My son, who is also one of the owners of Renewal by Andersen, came up with these 3 words, and I just absolutely wish I invented it. And what he says is there are 3 things that are unacceptable, and it's negativity, disrespect, inaction.
Wow.
I just absolutely love that.
That
Wow.
really hits home, I
Yeah.
think, for most
Yeah.
of the owners in this business. So you obviously did something right to instill those beliefs in him along the way, for sure. How do you go about protecting that training process? Because you hire new people or you get busy. Like, how do you maintain that integrity around that process?
Yeah, and just like anything inside of the business, you have iterations of systems, right? You have iterations. Why we're doing it that? Why are we doing that? I didn't know we were doing it that. I thought we were doing it this way. So you also have iterations of training. But I think that I don't want training to live at the CEO, that the CEO dictates training. I think that if we truly believe that that's a business inside of a business, the marketing team they have their marketing business. They're responsible for determining the best way to train their team to hit their daily targets because they have to speak to it every day. So they're empowered to create, modify, or eliminate different types of training inside of the business. And I think it has to be at that level. If the business waits for me to come up with the next training program, it's going to be waiting a long time. And again, because I'm not close to the situation, it might not even be the right training program. It might be something that's outdated 3 years ago would have worked, but no longer today.
When
So
you did have those disciplines in those areas, in those departments, you did talk about how, hey, we have talked about systems, standard operating procedure, things like that. And
Yeah.
you were right when you said, like, sometimes people start there instead of starting with what are the disciplines.
Correct.
But once in your journey in scaling, what were some of the systems that were developed as a result of the discipline approach to creating, like, hey, if you're in marketing, this is our discipline. We all understand it. Were there systems that emerged that even surprised you?
100%.
Oh, man.
100%. So when I think about your business, and it's amazing how much technology has grown in the home improvement, home services, and construction industry, right?
Familiar.
If I were to back up in 2009, I didn't even have a CRM when I launched. I used Excel, right? We knew the lead was sacred. When we started building out our call center, we knew the lead was sacred, but we didn't have a great way to ensure speed to lead. And we knew we wanted to be the first ones to ever call a lead. So somebody that worked in the business hooked up this speaker to our inbox. So we had our leads come to certain inboxes in the early days. Our leads came to a certain inbox on our desktop computer. And the minute any email came into that inbox, a siren went off, went whoop, whoop, whoop. And somebody knew to go over to the inbox and check and grab the lead and call it. And it was, so again, that's a system, okay?
It is.
The discipline was timeless. Now that system, we outgrew that and put in different technologies, but that's what I mean. Your system and process we don't want to think that systems and processes are timeless. We want to think the disciplines are and be flexible on the approach, which is the system and the process. Because we always want to continue to, how do we refine our business to be better and better at that single discipline?
So if you go back in this industry, I think in the design build world specifically, and you get to that $10 million mark, and the next goal is 20 million. That's a wide delta, right? To get from 10 to 20 million.
It's a different business.
Exactly. So if you were to think about these systems, what 2 to 3 systems would you really promote for these individuals to take hold of and ingrain in their teams?
Yeah, I'll give you a few of them, okay? People come up to me all the time and they tell me, we did 5 million this year, we're going to go to 10 next year. And I always ask, why? Why 10? Where did that number come from? And what's the point of that number? And I would tell that contractor that wants to go from 10 to 20 million, start with margin expansion, because top line revenue is ego and margin is sanity. I've learned that lesson the hard way. So that's what I would say. But look, there are a few things on that in a business, when you're growing from 10 million or 20 million or $3 million to $5 million, it's different people that have to join your team. And what changes with that is the culture. And what you tolerate as an organization, you actually set a new standard inside of the business. Anything you tolerate is now the new standard on how things are done. It could be a company Zoom and 3 people have their cameras off on the Zoom meeting, and you don't say anything. The following week, 5 people will have their cameras off because I guess we don't need our cameras on. And so as I write about in my book, Beyond the Hammer, your culture is shaped by the lowest level of acceptable behavior. So what we tolerate, we attract more of. So that's the first thing I would say. Make sure people understand what behaviors are necessary for the team to win. What does winning look like? What's your definition of winning as an organization? You have to be clear on that because everybody has a different definition of what winning looks like. It might be more home life. It might be more revenue. It might be more people. It might be more footprint. So what is your definition of winning? And then what behaviors do you need from the people on your team in order to win, hit that aspirational goal? And then what are you going to do when somebody isn't doing that? What are you going to do? Are you going to coach up? Are you going to coach out? Are you going to train? You can't accept it. And I think that's really important. The other thing you have to realize, as the business grows, we often put managers in roles because they have the most experience. And we haven't taught them, by the way, how to be a great manager. Maybe they've never been a manager before, or maybe they were a manager somewhere else, but now they're a manager for us, and we're telling them these are the numbers we need you to hit, these are the problems we have, but we're not teaching you how to be a great manager leader. We're not teaching them that how to be an effective coach and mentor, how to lead with a team vision statement, how to practice empowerment, how to communicate effectively, what KPIs matter, how to do a performance review, all those things. We have to upgrade our manager capabilities if we want to upgrade the capabilities of the people on our team.
Interesting. So let's say you're on this call right now and you're a remodeler and you're in a growth phase. What you're experiencing now is the chaos that comes with growing. And as you add people, you add complexity. As you said, complexity is this enemy of actually achieving your goals. And it can also destroy your culture. How is it that you can go about scaling without introducing that new level of chaos? Or how do you mitigate that chaos layer that comes with?
Look, now I just want to clarify that sometimes complexity can also be a barrier to entry. It could be a way to fend off competition. Now, we do such complicated projects, nobody else can touch us. We charge a premium, we make a ton of money, we charge $300,000 and we make a 20% net profit. I think that I've seen pieces of that, but not all of that. I haven't seen companies that say, not a lot of them, that they not only do very complicated projects, but they do them exceptionally well and make a ton of money along the way. And everybody's happy and it's scalable, right? So then we say, okay, so it's okay to have complexity at the homeowner level because a lot of design builders are watching this. But that doesn't mean that how you get there has to be so complicated. If you really sit back and look at the customer, if you look at the customer journey through the lens of the customer, or you look for friction inside of your business, where friction happens inside of an organization when an employee of yours is interacting with the customer or an employee of yours is interacting with somebody else inside of the business, right? Where are these friction points? Where are things breaking in the business? And how often are we fixing similar issues over and over again? That's stuff that I think is low-hanging fruit, that if we can get to the core issue and just take time to fix the core issue, a lot of those other issues tend to go away, and it simplifies things for everybody.
As you grow and you hit those various stages, whether it's 10 million or 15 million or 20 million, sometimes as you grow, the culture and the systems and processes you put in place become so overburdening that nobody wants to work there. Like you have that in system and things start to break down. How do you know that culture is breaking down or that you're losing what made you who you are as a team?
When you mentioned that, there were 3 phases of my business. When we started our company, we called ourselves a construction company. Then later on, we said, no, we're a sales and marketing company that happens to be in home improvements and eventually a training organization. When we were a sales and marketing company that happens to be in home improvements, we believed that in all departments other than our previous accountant that worked in our business. In fact, we called our accounting department our sales prevention department, which isn't necessarily a good nickname you want for your accounting room. But look, I think that in all fairness, she was trying to hold the wheels together and protect the business, and the business was just out of alignment. The business was out of alignment. And I think that what kind of helped fix a lot of that is that when we think about, if there's every department is a business within a business, okay? That means that there's a customer and a supplier relationship inside of the business. So the marketing team might be a supplier of appointments for the sales team. The sales team is now a customer from the marketing team, but also a supplier to the production department, because they're the ones that are giving them jobs to build. The production department might be a customer of the sales team, but a supplier to the homeowner. We can then have internal conversations about how can we be better internal suppliers and customers. I'm a sales manager. How can I be a better customer for you? How can I be a better supplier for you? These are the things that break down silos. These are the ways in which you find great systems and new disciplines for your business. These are the ways you create an aligned team. And these are the ways that are necessary in order to grow.
So did you, as the leader, it's almost like you had to map out, like, these are all businesses within the business and this is how they relate to one another. Did you overtly just change that narrative with those teams to get past this point?
Since the early stages of business, I think it was just recognized that every business is its own business. It was my role as the CEO of the organization to create an environment where communication could happen amongst the different leaders. And I just chose to do that through what's called a morning huddle. It was a 10-minute phone call where all the leaders would dial in. It wasn't necessarily my call exclusively. It was their call. It was our call. It was just an environment where communication could happen, so that if everybody understands what they're working on, because a lot of times what happens is, look, one department makes a change and they don't realize the law of unintended consequences down the road in another department. You're doing this? I didn't know we were doing this now. Why? Nobody told me. And it's, again, the great illusion of communication is thinking it was accomplished. So how do you create an environment where communication can happen and then they can communicate with their teams? It also helped me not have to have a whole lot of other meetings inside of the business.
It's more like your role as CEO is just creating that environment, that sandbox where everyone could have that moment, have that level of conversation. You did something after you exited that few CEOs do, which is that you put your ideas into a book dedicated by your t-shirt. You put the framework out in the world. It's been a year hence.
Yeah.
What's the criticism or pushback you've received on the book, if any, that you were like, hey, that's actually valid, or that's interesting, or that's something I didn't consider?
Yeah. So the couple things I'll give you on that. First of all, it was it's funny, not funny. Once you get traction with a book, okay, I didn't know this was going to happen. I never wrote a book before. I didn't know what even traction looked like, but the book has sold over 40,000 copies since it launched. So it sold a lot of books and the feedback's been fantastic. I guess once you get book selling and reviews, people come along and they make these AI workbooks. So if you were to go on Amazon and type in Beyond the Hammer, you will see 3 or 4 of these AI-produced workbooks, that be the Beyond the Hammer workbook. And it's like herding cats trying to swat these things down on Amazon. It's the craziest thing in the world. Next time, when I write my next book, which I'm working on, I will have a workbook with it. So this way I'm going to take up the first 2 positions on Amazon, just letting you know that. So one of the things is that I changed in the audio version. The audio book is really strong. The book, it's a great book. I'm very proud of it. The audio version is more conversational, because when I read the audio book, I changed some of the words. And on the next book, what I'll do is, before I come up with the final print version, I'm going to do the audio version and then go back and do one more edit in the book. I liked the changes I made after I read it out loud. I should have done that earlier. So that was one thing I learned. The other thing I'm always surprised at is which pillars, the 5 pillars, are the stickiest, that people comment all the time. And the 2 are actually the shortest pillars in there, which is belief is transferable, and the idea that leaders are aware of the echo of their voice, meaning people are going to determine what kind of day they're going to have based on the type of day that the leader is having. And that's an important thing to realize. And we just got to think about what kind of echo we're sending. So that was interesting, that it wasn't the culture through purpose and direction and modeling your business like a training organization. It's very in-depth. If you don't have a manager training program, please get my book, because there's the 10 practices of top performing managers is in it. It's a training program, but the 2 stickiest weren't that. I found that pretty interesting.
If you were sitting across from yourself now at that 5 million level, knowing everything that you know now, what is one honest, brutal truth that you tell that version of yourself?
I would normalize the idea that I don't know what I'm doing. That when I was running a $5 million company, I had no idea how to run a $5 million company, because I never did it before. And the same was true at 10 million, and the same was true at 15 million. And I think we have to normalize the idea, give yourself a freaking break. You're not an imposter. You're learning as you go. Keep a learning mindset. Admit that there are things you need to learn. Go out and seek that knowledge. Listen to webinars and podcasts like this. Go to conferences, seek that knowledge. Keep a learning mindset. Don't think just because you don't know what you're doing at $5 million, nobody does. Okay. So surround yourself with people that you can trust and things will be okay. And I would also tell that person that ADD is not a negative, it's your secret weapon, because you could accomplish more things than most people can in a day. So that's what I would say.
I just want to follow up on one thing that you said.
Yeah.
How important were peer groups to your growth and your success?
We formed a group called the Big 12. First, it was called the Dirty Dozen. It was a bunch of us that we were in the same business, that we were in, like doing one-day showers, and we're doing windows. At the time when we formed it, companies like West Shore Home were in it. At the time when we formed it, the total revenue between, and we're all friends, right? So we just got together. We met on a regular basis. Our marketing managers, our sales managers, they all met with each other, and it was a trusting relationship. Check your ego at the door. You don't have to be the smartest person. Don't be afraid to show your butt. And when we started this group, we had combined revenue of under $100 million combined, all these companies combined. If you would have backed it up 3 months ago, the combined revenue was in excess of $3 billion of those businesses.
Wow. ROI on that peer-to-peer advisory, it sounds like there.
To me, it got me to believe in myself. It gave me confidence in making decisions. We've got us all through some challenging times in COVID. Yeah, I strongly recommend coming up with a circle of people that are selling like-minded things that you're not competing with, and get honest and real.
Is it better to do that organically, or do you think, I mean, there's certainly a lot of these pre-made groups that are out there, but it sounds like you arrived at one just by merit of networking, and just getting to know people in the industry.
Yeah, we found a product that we all carried, one certain manufacturer's product in one of our product lines. So that was what united us. Look, there are definitely some mastermind groups out there, that for sure. I do think you can start one organically and really have a great time, especially if it starts with friendship first, just like anything. By the way, we might have the greatest aspirations as business leaders and owners, and we aspire to do all these things with our business and everything. If we look at our calendar, exposes all the lies we tell ourselves, right? We might want to do all these great things, but then we look at our calendar, and does our calendar reflect what we really want to become in this world? So I think if you want to create a mastermind group, you want to create that kind of a network, calendar it and honor that schedule. And I think also, if you want to work on your business, I'm sure as a business owner, you're very good at keeping appointments with your customer. Are you good at keeping appointments with yourself? You block out an appointment for yourself and make sure you always show up every week, because that's working on your business.
Before we get, go ahead.
I was going to say, last question before we get to Q&A real quick. You mentioned that you're working on your next book. What is the next big challenge that you're going to dig into and share your wisdom with?
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Beyond the Hammer, for those that read it, or didn't read it, you should get it, by the way. The first half is written as a business parable, and then the second half is written as actionable ways to implement the pillars of the parable, and it's gone over really well. And what I wanted to do is something that's never been done before. In fiction books, it's often that you have series. You have series on Netflix. You have series on all these, where you see the same characters over and over again. It's never been done in a business parable. So I'm actually creating a business parable series. So Marty Gold, the mentor in the first book, is the mentor of somebody else that's dealing with a whole nother problem. The first one was about business and leadership. It's written for managers and leaders. The second book is a sales book. It's a sales parable, not the kind of sales parable that's all focused on closing and overcoming objections. It's more about the concept that selling requires influence, and to me, sales is leadership. It's about leadership. It's about, how do I lead a customer down a journey? What does it mean? It's going to be a really cool sales book, and it's going to be fun. I'm about 6 chapters into it, with another 15 chapters to go, probably. Getting there.
Actually, because of how well you've answered questions, most of the questions that came through in Q&A were answered already. Actually, I think that you've just packed this session with so much good stuff. People had questions about scaling and the biggest mistake they make when they're trying to implement systems, and I think we answered a good amount of these. On behalf of everybody, thank you. And this is what we needed to hear. For everyone who's on here, as Brian said, 3 resources for you. One is you just need to Google Beyond the Hammer, grab that from Amazon. You can go to briangottlieb.com as well. So you can even learn more about him and get even better photos of him. And don't get the AI workbooks, get the book. And 2, if you wanted to talk about the infrastructure that we discussed today in your inbox, you'll get a review of the session and you'll get a recording of the session. I should tee up that we have the next in our master series coming up. It's on January 15th, and you'll also get an invite to that in your inbox if you're participating today, if you're observing today. And that'll be with Melton Design Build. The leadership team from that group has gone through a successful succession strategy on how they transferred leadership ownership. And we're excited at that one as well to show even that part of the journey and what did it take to get there. Joel, what are your thoughts as we close out?
So many great nuggets that I just pulled out of this. And so that's one of the thrills that I get out of having these conversations. The business within the business, I think, really key thing that I'm going to take away internally. And I think all of us on this call can benefit from that, because it's really accountability and how we show up for other people on our teams. And essentially, we're working for them as much as we are with them. I think you're a perfect example of what you can do, taking $3,000 in a folding table and a dream, and then really building something, a legacy that's going to last. And now you're imparting that and sharing that with other people. And I think we all are greatly appreciative of that. Thank you, Brian. And we sincerely appreciate your time today, my friend.
Appreciate the invite. Thanks for putting it together. Thank you very much for anybody that tuned in for this. I really appreciate you all. Okay.
All right.
Have
Thanks
a great
very
day.
much.
Thanks everybody. Have a great time. Appreciate it.